The year is 1400. The North Sea foams with sails painted with a red and white banner. From Bergen to Novgorod, from London to Lubeck, the harbors bow to the Hanseatic League. But in this alternate world, those banners do not stop at the Baltic. They spread into the Atlantic, the Mediterranean, and beyond. The Hanseatic League, once a coalition of merchants, transforms into a thalassocracy, a sea empire. And the world's fate bends not under kings and queens, but under guilds and councils of traders. In our history, the Hanseatic League was a commercial network of cities stretching from Germany to Scandinavia, peaking between the 13th and 15th centuries. They dominated trade in timber, fish, salt, and furs, but they were never a state, only an alliance, and their power waned as centralized monarchies England, France, Denmark, Sweden rose. By the 16th century, the League was a shadow of itself. But let's imagine a pivot. Instead of clinging to trade privileges, the League evolves. They build permanent fleets not just for defense but for conquest. They impose maritime law, unite under a stronger central council, and transform wealth into military power. Lubeck becomes not only a hub of commerce but the capital of an empire of merchants. The immediate difference is on the seas. Pirates and rival kingdoms are crushed beneath Hanseatic fleets. London is forced to grant greater concessions, its merchants bent to Lubeck's will. Norway and Denmark, instead of taxing Baltic trade, become protectorates of the League. With naval dominance, the Hanseatic League expands into the Atlantic by the late 14th century, establishing colonies in Iceland, Greenland, and perhaps even North America centuries before Columbus. The human consequences ripple quickly. A fisherman in Bergen, in our world bound to local markets, now sells his catch across a vast Hanseatic empire. His children grow up in a society where merchants, not kings, decide policy. In Lubeck, a young apprentice once destined for modest guild work now dreams of command at sea, captaining fleets that carry European goods as far as Africa. A Novgorod trader, instead of balancing between Russian princes and Hanseatic demands, finds himself fully integrated into a maritime state that stretches across continents. Culture changes with this dominance. In our world, monarchs and nobles defined art, sponsoring cathedrals and palaces. In this alternate world, merchant wealth dictates style. Public halls, guild halls, and trading posts are built with grandeur rivaling palaces. Art celebrates commerce, murals of ships, portraits of traders, hymns to wealth flowing across oceans. Universities funded by merchants train not theologians alone, but accountants, navigators, and shipbuilders. Knowledge becomes practical, applied, global. Now let's zoom out to the age of exploration. In our history, Spain and Portugal spearheaded voyages to the New World, but here the Hanseatic League beats them to it. By the early 15th century, armed with superior fleets and navigational experience, they round Africa and reach India. Instead of Lisbon or Seville, it is Lubeck and Hamburg that command the spice trade. Colonies in West Africa, trading posts in India, and fortified ports in the East Indies emerge under merchant councils. Imagine the Americas discovered not by Spanish conquistadors but by Hanseatic merchants. Instead of seeking gold for kings, they seek sustainable trade. Colonies may look less like empires of plunder and more like vast trading networks with forts and ports but fewer sprawling conquests. Indigenous peoples, instead of facing the full brunt of Spanish militarism, face negotiation, treaties, and sometimes exploitation by contracts rather than conquest. Lives are still disrupted, but in a different way ensnared by economics instead of swords. The Renaissance shifts as well. In our world, Italian city-states like Venice and Florence thrived on trade and banking, inspiring art and thought. In this alternate world, the Hanseatic League overshadows them. Northern Europe, not Italy, becomes the cultural engine. Hamburg, Bremen, and Lubeck rival Florence and Venice as centers of wealth. Artists paint portraits of merchant councils instead of dukes. Philosophers debate commerce as the engine of human progress. The Renaissance wears fur cloaks and northern stone, not silk and Italian marble. The Reformation also unfolds differently. In our timeline, Martin Luther's protest against indulgences spread because German princes shielded him from Catholic authority. In this alternate world, the Hanseatic League, rich, independent, and less tied to Rome, provides an even stronger platform. Merchants back reformers, not just for faith but for independence from papal taxation. Protestantism spreads faster, tied to economic freedom. By 1500, much of Europe's north is not only Protestant but united under a merchant Catholic-Protestant hybrid tradition that prioritizes trade over doctrine. But the most profound change lies in politics. Nation-states rise slower. Without the Hanseatic League's collapse, kings of Denmark, Sweden, and England are checked. Instead of centralized monarchies, Europe becomes dominated by federations of cities. The medieval idea of free towns expands into a continental reality. Parliaments of merchants, not courts of kings, decide policy. Democracy emerges earlier, not from revolutions against monarchs, but from councils of traders governing empires by consensus. Zoom into individuals' lives again. A girl in Lübeck, who in our timeline would never imagine crossing the seas, here grows up in a city that sends fleets worldwide. By adulthood, she travels with her family to colonies in Africa, learning languages and running trade posts. A boy in Riga, once destined to toil under local lords, here becomes a navigator on ships that cross the Atlantic, his life defined not by feudalism but by opportunity through commerce. The middle class, the burghers, expand into a global ruling class. Globally, the effects ripple endlessly. Asia encounters Europe not through Spanish galleons but through Hanseatic fleets. Trade is more balanced, less about conquest, more about negotiation, though still unequal. China and India trade with the League as partners, not simply as targets. Africa, instead of being carved into colonies of monarchs, becomes dotted with Hanseatic ports. The transatlantic slave trade may still occur, but it is structured differently, driven by economic contracts rather than imperial decree, perhaps smaller in scale, perhaps slower to expand. By the 17th century, the League is the first true capitalist empire. Nation-states lag behind. England and France try to break free but find themselves hemmed in by Hanseatic control of the seas. The 30 Years' War never erupts as we know it because the balance of Catholic-Protestant rivalry is replaced by the dominance of merchant pragmatism. Europe is less fractured by religion, more driven by commerce. The Enlightenment takes on a mercantile flavor. Thinkers do not focus solely on natural rights or monarchs, but on trade rights, fair contracts, and the role of economics in human freedom. Adam Smith's ideas arrive earlier, centuries before he was born, because merchants already rule. By the 18th century, the Hanseatic League dominates the globe. Its fleets crisscross the oceans, its colonies form not kingdoms but trade federations. The Americas are dotted with Hanseatic towns, each governed by councils, not viceroys. Asia resists conquest but engages deeply with trade. Africa remains part of the global economy but perhaps avoids full-scale imperial domination, at least for longer. The modern world looks more commercial, less imperial. Would this world be better? For many, yes. The devastation of imperial conquests might be lessened. Indigenous societies may survive longer, integrated through trade rather than outright destruction. The brutal dynastic wars of Europe may be smaller. But for others, exploitation takes a different form. Contracts replace crowns, but the hunger for profit still consumes lives. Wage slavery, debt, and commercial monopolies become chains just as harsh as any king's tax. By the modern era, instead of empires of kings Spanish, British, French, we inherit empires of merchants. The globe is unified earlier, but under economic councils, our world is capitalist centuries sooner. Maybe technology leaps ahead as wealth is poured into ships, factories, and exploration. Maybe inequality deepens as merchants care less for peasants than even kings did. Still, one thing is clear. Had the Hanseatic League transformed from alliance to empire, the map of the world would be painted not with crowns but with trademarks. The seas would have flown their banner, and the age of nations might never have come, so what do you think? Would a world ruled by merchants be freer, fairer, and more prosperous, or simply enslaved to profit under different masters? Drop your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to Sheriff Reactions. Hit the bell so you never miss a daily flip, because history isn't just what happened, it's what might have been.